Okay, the garden tan.
Well, welcome everybody to the Mormon Newscast. I am Bill Reel. I'm joined by my esteemed colleagues, Rebecca Biblioteca and Radio Free Mormon. Glad that both of you are along for this ride tonight. It is July 28th, 2025, and we're going to hit this hard. We've got a big show tonight. Welcome to the audience for joining us. We're glad you're here. RFM and Rebecca, how are you guys doing this evening?
Rebecca's tanned and fit, ready to go. I can see.
That's why when we first came in, we were laughing because RFM goes, do you have a spray tan, Rebecca? I'm like, no, I've been out gardening. People do go outside, not in Seattle probably to get tan, but in Utah, yes. If you're outside, you're going to get tan.
I think there's a study been done on what percentage of people who do get spray tans answer, yes, I got a spray tan when asked.
Yeah, I've never had one. So.
It's approaching zero.
God.
Well, we've got a big show tonight packed with things. Let me put this up on the screen, and we'll just note this here off the back. So LDS Missionary Preys on Children. That is the Call to Perv. RFM was singing the song before we got started here.
You know how that goes, Rebecca?
Yeah, I do. No, Call to Serve. I was a primary pianist at age 11, so we sang that a lot.
Call to perv him, heavenly King of glory, chosen heir to witness for his name.
No. Yep. Oh, yeah.
Yep. And we'll be going into that. The other story, too, this will actually show up later in the show, but it's another abuse story. Mormon family arrested for abuse. So we'll get to that one as well. A whole family.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little crazy. And we've got a story on Tim Ballard being acquitted.
Yes, that's mine.
We've got temple updates from both, I think Heber as well as Fairview.
Yep.
Grand Marshal at the Days of 47 parade, which was Elder Holland, and a few other little fun stories along the way. I'll be doing the first story tonight. And so with that, I'm going to put up on the screen there's our thumbnail, and we'll get into that story. This is right off of the U.S. Department of Justice press release, former missionary charged with sexually abusing minors. You can see the other article there on the left, same story. On July 16, 2025, a federal grand jury in Pennsylvania indicted 28-year-old William James Purdy of West Valley City, Utah, for sexually exploiting minors in Tonga. Purdy is accused of grooming and abusing at least 14 young boys while serving as a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in 2017, and later returning in 2019 to teach at a school, and I'm not going to be able to pronounce that well, but Nuku Olofa. He allegedly provided gifts like electronics, money, food, toys, and internet access in exchange for sexual acts, and was accused of secretly recording children in his bathroom. Prosecutors allege that Purdy systematically groomed his victims and even their parents, offering extra tutoring and inviting boys to live with him under a veneer of mentorship. He targeted marginalized communities in Tonga, manipulating parental trust and exploiting conservative cultural stigma to keep the abuse hidden. An 8-year-old boy's disclosure in October 2022 led to Purdy's arrest by Tongan authorities. Now, this is where it starts to get a little interesting. There's a picture of him. Despite being detained in Tonga, Purdy was released and allegedly resumed abusing minors just before his March 2023 trial. He fled using a falsified Tongan identity, first to Fiji and then back to Utah, where he later enrolled at I don't know how to pronounce that university, but Duquesne University as a law student and worked as a summer associate in Pittsburgh while still under fugitive status using his false identity. On July 24th, 2025, Purdy was arrested in Pittsburgh. A federal magistrate ordered his transfer to Utah, where the Department of Justice will prosecute him under statutes addressing sexual exploitation of children and transporting minors for illicit conduct. Department of Justice officials emphasize that Purdy's case is part of a broader initiative, Project Safe Childhood, to hold Americans accountable for abuses committed abroad. And I thought the story ended there, but it even gets crazier than that. So I saw another article today as I was researching this story, and following Purdy's dramatic arrest in the United States, new reporting from Kaniva, Tonga, has revealed that his ability to escape Tonga hinged on a deeply troubling failure in that country's passport and identity system. Authorities discovered that Purdy obtained a fraudulent Tongan passport under the name Semisi Nau, raising serious questions about the integrity of Tonga's immigration processes. Malia Musi Halafunoa, age 40, and Jim Faloa Joseph Dwyer Manu Tapua, age 29, and Tio Filato, age 43. I got all three of those names wrong, I'm sure. All charged in 2023 for allegedly facilitating Purdy's escape through passport fraud. This revelation adds another layer of institutional failure. Not only did a known child abuse suspect escape custody, but he did so with apparent help from inside Tonga's bureaucratic infrastructure. The global reaction
You
to
know if
Purdy,
they were Mormons?
I don't know. They didn't have those kinds of details in the story. And the best image we have of this lady is a blurry image of her like walking past a camera or something. So we don't even have good photos of this. So this is sort of breaking in the last day or two, but an interesting story and what's going on. So the global reaction to Purdy's arrest has been swift and intense. According to Kaniva Tonga, an international media outlet, and child protection advocates are calling for systemic reforms. Obviously, there's lots of things that went wrong in this case, not just in Tonga, but also within missionary sending organizations like the LDS Church. Tongans have expressed collective outrage not only at the abuse itself, but how it was enabled by both external actors and internal lapses in enforcement. There's growing pressure on the Tongan government to ensure this never happens again, and for U.S. institutions, including the church, to acknowledge the profound harm caused. This guy, he serves a mission in Tonga. Sounds like he's originally maybe from there, so it might have been a local mission that he was serving. But he committed a multitude of abuses against children. Comes into this
Allegedly, of course, Bill.
Yeah, allegedly. And comes into this country and then allegedly continues to carry out abuses and then ends up going back to Tonga and then back here under a false alias to try to avoid law enforcement. So that story there, I won't necessarily read the rest. There's not a whole lot of other information there. It's just pointing out the work behind the scenes to fix the system. Thoughts from you guys on a crazy story of this Polynesian guy going back and forth, creating false identities, trying to get away from the law, and continually looking for a space to abuse children. Your thoughts?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. My microphone fell off and sometimes it hits the mute button. I was just really surprised at how quickly this article just spread. And the headline is Mormon Missionary over and over. I was thinking the church is not going to be happy about that because, it is spreading like wildfire. Even today we were trying to decide what's our top story. And this one has just absolutely taken off. And just the idea of really vulnerable children who are raised to adore missionaries, right? Look up to missionaries. I remember looking up to missionaries. It was very exciting when they'd come to your primary class or your Sunday school class. And it was like a hero worship thing. And to just take advantage of that. And when it said groom families also, that's it, isn't it? Right? They come into the home, they're complimentary, they love the kids, they're bringing gifts, and it's just the worst abuse and taking advantage of this relationship that is so special, right? When a missionary comes into your home, it's supposed to be something really wonderful and special for the kids. And so the details of this are just awful, and I'm guessing there'll be worse details coming out as they start digging into what really happened.
Well, I got two thoughts. One minor, the other one major. I'll start with the minor one. It might be Duquesne. I'm not sure if that's how they pronounce it, the law school. But I'm sitting here, it's one thing to get out of Tonga on a fake name with a fake passport, especially you got a little help from your friends. But I'm not exactly sure how he got enrolled in a law school. Presumably, he doesn't have any high school or other college transcripts under his fake name. Then he could submit to the law school in his application process or any of those other things that one would need. So I'm sure there's a little bit of a story there as well. The main thing is, can you put this? I'll put this back up here, Bill, okay? Look at that face. Look at that face. These are allegations Apparently, he fled to avoid standing trial on the allegations. But if you're going to trust your kids to anybody, you're going to trust them to this guy. Look at him. This is a lesson. This is a lesson which I've seen over and over again, which is for whatever reason, we somehow think that child sex abusers, and once again, allegations here, but we sometimes seem to think that we can spot them. We can tell them. We'll know. Our spider sense will go off before we entrust our kids to somebody. But this guy, look at him. He's adorable. Absolutely. So the lesson, of course, is don't trust anyone.
Yeah,
If you can't trust that kid, I don't think you can trust anybody.
We've been set up to think this, RFM, which I'll just put up on the screen. Here is James E. Faust, The Light in Their Eyes. I remember this talk. This was back in 2005, October. There are lots of talks like this. There's when I see a good Latter-day Saint, you can just see the glow about them. You can just see their countenance.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many moments where Mormonism has taught us that if someone looks good, looks like they're righteous, has that smile, makes you feel the spirit when they talk, then you can trust them. They've got righteousness on their side. And the opposite is true too. The moment you leave the church, maybe nothing about you's even changed. And suddenly members have this perception about you that you've lost the Holy Ghost. You've lost that countenance. You no longer have the light in your eyes. You've been set up for this. I'll also say too, the story involves this guy being alone with children. And we criticize Mormonism a lot. But the one thing Mormonism really works hard to do, I think, is to make sure that its missionaries stay in pairs.
Yes.
And something about the system fell apart here. And I can't exactly blame Mormonism for that. And as Rebecca pointed out, more details will come out. But I think hopefully we're going to learn how this kid was able to isolate children in private settings so that this can be avoided in the future.
Can I just say something here? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rebecca, please.
I was just going to say, I sent you a picture on Messenger, Bill. I don't know if you can pull this up. I have a comment to make about it, but that is one thing my kids that went on a mission, I hammered into them. You never are, you just do not, you are not alone by accident for any reason, because you never know what could happen or what, accusations could be made. So it's up to parents, I think. Just don't take it, at face value. You have got to keep those rules. There's a reason that you're together. So, but I just wanted to say about the countenance. Do you see that I sent you, Bill?
Yep. I'm just getting ready to put it up on the screen.
The biggest post I ever had on ex-Mormon Reddit was about light in their eyes and how you can tell. This is Brian David Mitchell and Wanda Barzee, who kidnapped Elizabeth Smart. This is them. They met. They were both in a ward together, and she was the piano player, and he was directing. They were involved in a theatrical presentation in a ward, and they met, kind of got together. But look at those faces. Look at that light, right? You would just think that was the nicest couple. And flash forward a few years, and they've kidnapped Elizabeth Smart, and we all know what happened there. So
they don't look crazy at all. She looks like she ate some of the piano keys. She must have been hungry.
I'm telling you, those theater people, I'm one of them.
Yeah. They got too much light in their eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that. And so I'm going to go past this story here because I've got the other abuse story set up, but I actually have it further along in the slideshow for another spot. So I'm going to add this up on the screen, RFM, and turn the time over to you for the story about Tim Ballard and what's going on most recently with him.
Well, we are going to go into some depth in this, and I hope you'll forgive me because this is a big freaking deal. Remember how Jen Camp got her case dismissed because she was playing fast and loose with the evidence and violating rules all over the place and wouldn't reform when she was called on it by the judge? So the case got dismissed. Well, that's what just happened with Celeste Boris's case against Tim Ballard. The main difference is that Celeste Boris had attorneys helping her. Right? So this is astounding. I have I read a bunch of articles about this. I picked one from the Salt Lake Tribune. It covers the basis, but then I was able, because I've got a very special contact in Salt Lake City, a lawyer who was able to access the 58-page findings of fact and conclusions of law that Judge Shaughnessy issued in dismissing this case with prejudice, which means it cannot be brought again. That's how bad this is. Okay, so everybody knows The basic rule is that judges have lots of power to control their courtroom and the cases in their courtroom. And dismissing a case is the nuclear option. It is the last thing you're supposed to do and the last thing you're going to do as a judge. There are other sanctions available that are less than that, but that will still get the point across. And you are not supposed to go for the nuclear option unless you believe as a judge that none of the other options are going to take care of the problem. They're not going to deal with the problem. And that's what this judge did. And he may be right. So July 22nd, 2025, this was 6 days ago. This article comes out. A judge drops the lawsuit. Drops is probably not the right word. I know it's shorter than dismisses, but he dismisses the lawsuit against Tim Ballard. Says accuser, that's Celeste Boris, stole OUR, Operation Underground Railroad, founders, that's Tim Ballard's personal documents. Remember, this was an issue back a year and a half ago. We'll play a clip on a news clip from that, from a year and a half ago once we get toward the end of this. This is incredible. The wrongful nature of that conduct should have been obvious to anyone, Judge Todd Shaughnessy said, including the attorneys who filed the lawsuit. This is incredible. And I knew I had a lot of questions that the reporters were not answering in the the inches that they have to devote to the story. So I was able to get this document. Once again, this is the article from the Tribune, a lawsuit against Tim Ballard that alleged the anti-child trafficking celebrity assaulted and raped his assistant, that's Celeste Boris, it's Borys, by the way, has been dismissed by a judge who sternly scolded the plaintiff's attorneys and said they improperly used documents stolen from Ballard to build their case. And it was Celeste Boris doing the stealing. And the attorneys not telling her to stop it and then using the documents in order to make them public and try the case in the press, which is why Tim Ballard has a defamation suit against them. Going on with the article, 3rd District Judge Todd Shaughnessy also dismissed Assistant Celeste Boris's lawsuit against Operation Underground Railroad. She had one against Tim Ballard, one against OUR, both of them dismissed. The anti-trafficking organization Ballard founded as punishment for her lawyers circumventing the court's rules of evidence and violating certain ethical rules as well. Practically speaking, what Ms. Boris did, now this is a quote from the judge in his 58-page ruling. Practically speaking, what Ms. Boris did is no different than if she had used the key to access Mr. Ballard's office in the dark of night to secretly photocopy documents from locked file drawers, including documents that were marked as privileged. By the way, when he says privilege, he means attorney-client privilege is emblazoned across the top of them. And she grabbed them, gave them to her lawyers who used them. I mean, my gosh, if anybody should know what that means, it should be lawyers. Okay? Absolutely incredible that this is going on. And that's why it led to a dismissal. Shaughnessy wrote in his ruling Friday, the wrongful nature of that conduct should have been obvious to anyone, including, importantly, her lawyers. As Ballard's executive assistant, Celeste Boris had access to his email and electronic documents. Let me tell you what's going on here, okay? She was his executive assistant back at OUR, okay? And all this stuff happened in 2023, as you may recall. I think it was the July 4th weekend that Sound of Freedom came out, was a surprise hit of the summer. And then we find out much later that right before that in June, Tim Ballard had stepped down from his position as the CEO of Operation Underground Railroad because of these allegations that were going on. But we didn't find out about any of that until much later, but that's what was happening behind the scenes. Now, Celeste Boris was his executive assistant at the time, and then he goes and he leaves OUR and starts his own company called the Spear Company, or SPEAR, if you remember that. Well, she follows him and she continues to be his executive assistant there at the Spear organization. Now, September comes along, still 2023. There's that crazy press conference on the steps of the Salt Lake City Capitol that's given by an attorney representing, I think, 5 individuals, 5 women who are only denominated by their initials in the original lawsuit. They hadn't even filed a lawsuit yet in September. She's just getting up there and making an announcement, and people were wondering what it was that she was getting at. Well, she does that. And then in October, what happens is that Celeste Boris has now contacted these attorneys, and they're representing her. And they file a case against Tim Ballard on behalf of Celeste Boris, the executive assistant, in October. I think it's October 10th of 2023. The amazing thing is that she continues to not log out of having access to all of Tim Ballard's emails, both incoming and outgoing, and everything that's in the archives, as well as a ton of documents that he has archived in Google Docs. And so she continues to have that until November. And during that time period, she helps herself to a bunch of these documents, which were around 94 or 95 in total after she searched throughout and came up with the most damning thing she could find, which she then hands off to her attorneys. And the attorneys know where she's getting this from because she tells, I believe that's true. They got to know where she's getting them from. And she tells them, they don't tell her to stop doing this. They don't notify the other side. They just start attaching these documents. Remember, like his Tim Ballard's kind of crazy, if I can just say that, patriarchal blessing. Remember that he got from, oh gosh, who was that guy?
Tom Harrison.
Yes. And about how he's, like the one mighty and strong, and he's fantastic. And,
yeah, he's going to be the prophet and the president.
Yes,
think
thank
now
you.
this may pave the way for him to still be president. Prophet, probably out.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, of course. And that has nothing to do with the merits of the lawsuit as to whether he had abused this woman or sexually assaulted her. But no, it's all getting released to the press, and everybody's making a big deal about it because it's so crazy sounding, right? And everybody's just going, what on earth is going on with Tim Ballard? And of course, the psychic, and all that kind of stuff that was going on. And Nephi channeling through the psychic to let her know where all the lost kids were, like Gardy Marty, I think it was, and he was never there because Nephi he's just terrible at directions. He could never find anything without that Leahona. So that's why he couldn't find the kids. But this is all going on behind the scenes, and they're finding out all this stuff, and they are trying the case. They're not just trying the case in the public. They're smearing this guy with irrelevant stuff that Celeste Boris had stolen after she was no longer working for him. Okay, so October comes along. She stops working for him, but she still has access. So not only is she not working for him, she is filing a lawsuit and has filed a lawsuit against him. He doesn't know this because he doesn't get served with the lawsuit until the end of November. So there's over a month there where a lawsuit's been filed against him. She knows it. Celeste Boris knows it. And she's still going through all of his stuff in order to find this. It's just absolutely remarkable. There's a few more details. I just want to give you a brief lowdown on what was going on. So as Ballard's executive assistant, Celeste Boris had access to his email and electronic documents, including after she was no longer employed by him. According to court records, Boris was at least once able to search and download files after her lawsuit against Ballard had been filed. At least once. That's all she copped to, which I think was October 30th. Yeah. And by the way, the judge did not feel like she was credible in a number of areas, and this was one of them, in her recounting about how much, which is really how little, she had searched. But he says, it doesn't make any difference. Even if we take you at face value, what you're doing is still atrocious. And what your attorneys did is atrocious. There are no clean hands here. Now, here's what I've got to say. It is possible there are people out here who may misunderstand. I think that Tim Ballard is, he's got a lot of issues. Let's put it that way. And he has done a lot of things which I do not think are very good, and I think they could be actionable in a lawsuit. They had a perfectly good lawsuit here. They screwed up and got dismissed a perfectly good lawsuit against Tim Ballard because of what the plaintiff and the plaintiff's attorneys did. So this is not me saying Tim Ballard's innocent. You see, this has nothing to do with the merits of the case on what he did or didn't do. This has to do with everything that the plaintiffs did and being sanctioned for it, and the judge saying dismissal is the only appropriate sanction. We've got to go there. So that's Tim Ballard also, like the judge says in his 58-page ruling, says, Tim Ballard didn't change the passwords. I mean, hello, he should have changed the passwords. He didn't. But of course, the judge has to follow up by saying what I think is obvious. Well, just because he didn't change the passwords doesn't mean that she has license to go in after she's quit, after she's not working, and after a lawsuit's been filed against him, after she's filed the lawsuit against him, and she's going and gathering the information. Okay, so the reason this is problematic is because once you file the lawsuit, you got lawyers involved. There's discovery methods that are supposed to go on between the parties to get stuff. You don't go self-helping and basically stealing things from one party or the other. Many of those documents later were made public, including Ballard's correspondence with attorneys, a church blessing envisioning Ballard's greatness, communications with prominent political figures, and others. In court filings in Celeste Boris's case, and a separate lawsuit filed by 5 women who also accused Ballard of sexual misconduct and assault. So what these lawyers did, they've got Celeste Boris, she's his gold mine, just taking all these documents that she still has access to. Not only did they take a bunch of those and put them on as exhibits on Tim Ballard's case, so they became immediately public upon filing, they seeded a bunch of their other clients' cases with these same kind of documents, which are probably going to face similar kinds of motions in the future. Although I don't know that any of them will result in the extreme sanction of getting dismissed, because the same facts are not going to be there the way they are here. Here, I believe this is Celeste Boris. In short, the record clearly and convincingly establishes that the conduct by Ms. Boris, once again, this is the judge, and her attorneys was intentional or willful. It was a deliberate effort to bypass discovery and the requirements of the rules of civil procedure, and it resulted in potentially privileged communications being publicly disclosed, the judge wrote. Yeah, if you want to see, this is one of the main things that gets him mad, is about the privileged communications that were disclosed. And you didn't have to guess at it. It says attorney-client privilege right across the top. If you're an attorney and you get that in discovery or somehow, you immediately stop the presses, okay? And things have to happen. You don't go broadcasting it. I mean, my gosh, this is crazy what they were doing. And by they, I mean the plaintiff's attorneys. Judge Shaughnessy said there was no way to undo the damage that had been done in the case, and opted to dismiss Celeste Boris's claim as punishment for the acts he termed deliberate and egregious. One of Ballard's attorneys, so this is Tim Ballard's attorneys on the defense, Whitney Bernstein, said in a news conference Tuesday that the ruling demonstrates that the allegations against Ballard were part of a smear campaign and a shakedown. I think that's certainly true. I don't think they have anything to do with the merits of the case, but I think it was obviously a smear campaign and a shakedown. Going on with, I think, her quote, yes, Tim Ballard did not assault anyone. Now we're getting into the merits of the case, and she's just saying things that defense attorneys say. Tim Ballard did not assault anyone, and we are very thankful to the court for its 58-page, detailed, thorough opinion that dismissed this case against him, Bernstein said, or Bernstein. We think it's high time for Tim to reclaim his hard-earned reputation as a leader in the fight protecting women and children from trafficking. Absolutely. And don't forget that couple's ruse. Okay, everybody, just so going back down memory lane, several of these plaintiffs had come forward and had alleged that Tim Ballard had taught them the couple's ruse. And for anybody who doesn't remember, the couple's ruse was how Tim and his make-believe girlfriend, who went to these foreign countries to rescue the trafficked kids, they have to look like they are sexually intimate so that they will be able to fool these child traffickers. And so they go through all this training so that when the time happens, they won't look like, oh my gosh, you caught us. We're not really who we say we are. I guess the idea had never occurred to Tim Ballard of not taking his wife or a girlfriend on one of these ventures. No, that was essential.
This is Jess. She needs.
So that was something that was shocking to me. And the thing that kind of cinched the deal for me more than anything else was Tim Ballard coming out and admitting that the couple's ruse was something he used. But of course, he's got a great reason for it. No, you admitted to it. That was all you had to do to convince me that you are not righteous, man. Nobody's going to believe that. I don't think there's anybody out there, a reasonable person who's not involved in the case or involved with Tim Ballard or whatever he stands for at this point, who's going to look at that and say, yeah, that makes sense to me. That's totally reasonable that you would have to do that. So that's the problem. And that's what he was looking at with this other case before they got it dismissed because of bad conduct. Boris's attorneys. Now, this is a picture from a news conference that happened about a year and a half ago. Boris is in the middle. One of her attorneys is on the right. It's her left. Boris is left. This is the one, and I can't remember her name, who gave that press conference in September of 2023. And this other lady over here on the other side, the blonde, I'm not sure if she's an attorney or not. But here we have Boris's attorneys said in a statement that they were disappointed by the ruling, which was not made on the merits of her claims and does not absolve Mr. Ballard of his guilt. No, it convicts you of your guilt. That's what it does, you dumbass attorneys. Excuse me. They said they are considering an appeal of the matter and that there are still open criminal investigations into Ballard in several states. Yeah, you can see him grasping for fig leaves right and left. Former Utah attorney General Sean Reyes, remember him? For years, a close associate of Ballard's announced in 2023 his office would also investigate the allegations against his friend. A spokesperson for current Attorney General Derek Brown said the office would not confirm or deny whether investigations are underway. And I suppose they've got reasons for that, but I'm not exactly sure what they are, just confirming or denying. In October 2023, Boris and 5 other accusers filed a pair of lawsuits accusing Ballard of sexual misconduct and assault under the guise of a couple's ruse, in which Ballard and the women would pose as partners on purported undercover child rescue missions. Celeste Boris also accused Ballard of raping her several times, which I won't make any comments about that. Ballard has denied wrongdoing and sued the women for defamation. Apparently, it was something that came to her a long time after it happened that she had been raped. Ballard has denied wrongdoing and sued the women for defamation. That case is pending, but relies on some of the same documentation that led to the dismissal of Boris's suit. Okay. I think I mentioned that earlier. Did you see this movie, Bill, Rebecca?
Yep, I saw it very late. I finally realized, okay, if I'm going to be reporting on all this, I need to go see what they're talking about. I just could not believe the low quality of the film. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
My favorite Jesus, Jim Caviezel.
Jim Caviezel. Yeah, he's pretty good. The lawsuits came after Ballard's ouster from Operation Underground Railroad, since rebranded as Our Rescue, and shortly after the release of the movie Sound of Freedom, supposedly based on the story of the anti-trafficking organization. The movie's success elevated Ballard's profile and sparked discussion that Ballard would run for the U.S. Senate seat that Mitt Romney was vacating in 2024. So all this was happening. I think it was September. And then, the church came out with this announcement, apparently trying to distance Elder Ballard, the apostle from Tim Ballard. Mark Eisenhut, another of Ballard's attorneys, alleged Tuesday that there was an extraordinarily well-funded campaign to ruin Ballard's reputation and sink his political aspirations by individuals who he did not name, motivated by evil intentions. I put sick after who and was a little bit disappointed to see that that was in the Tribune. Who instead of whom. Pretty sure that should be whom there. He did not name. Motivated by evil intentions. Well, I don't know about that, but obviously this was bad conduct by attorneys. And I was talking to my attorney friend in Salt Lake before the show, and he was asking me, how would you describe this? I mean, why would anybody ever do this? I mean, they're not only risking their case, they're risking their bar card, because these attorneys may want to be looking at different careers in the future. This could end up being referred, and probably, I don't see how this doesn't get referred to the Bar Association in Utah and some action be taken against them. So, but motivated by evil intentions. Yeah, there's a lot of talk about all these big conspiracies, especially from Tim Ballard's side. I'm not convinced that those are accurate. I think this was a pretty low-level, dumb hack job by some attorneys and a very overzealous former employee. And as the judge pointed out, the employee shouldn't be doing this, but it's the attorneys who know about the legalities or should know about the legalities of this. This isn't like really difficult stuff that most attorneys don't know about. This is very basic, bare bones practice that all attorneys should know or probably shouldn't be practicing. Boris's suit is now the third of 8 court cases filed by the same group of attorneys. They're filing them all. All of these plaintiffs got the same attorneys, and I don't know. Some of them may be regretting it by now. Others may yet. Were you going to say something, Bill? Was that you saying something? Okay. Was that you, Rebecca? Well, jump in anytime you want. Filed by the same group of attorneys against Ballard to be entirely or largely dismissed. So there's 8 lawsuits. 3 of them are gone for the most part. Previously, a personal injury suit against Ballard and Operation Underground Railroad, filed by a woman injured during a training event, was mostly dismissed. But a negligence claim remains outstanding. Another lawsuit by a woman who alleged Ballard tried to intimidate her into not criticizing him, and OUR, was also dismissed. And here's another one. If you saw the movie, this person on the left is the actress who portrayed the person on the right, who's a real life person named Kelly Suarez. Kelly Suarez, who was the basis for a character in Sound of Freedom, sued Ballard for defamation over how she was depicted in the film. But Suarez was subsequently found guilty of pimping a minor in Colombia. Her lawsuit remains active. Yeah, but probably not for not much longer. It's hard to maintain a defamation suit where you're claiming that he defamed me by saying I was pimping kids after you get convicted of pimping kids. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's defamation so much anymore. So that one is probably on its last legs as far as that lawsuit goes as well. The same women who sued Ballard in state court have also filed a federal lawsuit accusing Ballard of human trafficking. And a judge last year awarded sexual violence protective orders to Celeste Boris and a temporary order to another Ballard accuser, Kira Lynch. Yeah, those are handed out pretty regularly. Now, this is a picture of the judge, Todd Shaughnessy, 3rd District Court. And this was the quote. It starts with this language, which wasn't quoted before. What Ms. Boris did is no different than if she had used a key to access Mr. Ballard's office in the dark of night. Actually, we did read this before. Over here in the article, it has a little bit of an additional language at the beginning. Ms. Boris, the judge writes, Ms. Boris and her attorney
stepped up. Let's take a look at some exciting new features straight from your wish list, now available in Hootsuite.
I am so sorry. There are ads. So you have 2 videos that are going to play here shortly on our websites, and I'm getting ads that are coming up on them. So,
oh my gosh. Okay.
Anyway,
Ghost in the Machine.
Sorry.
The Rise of the Machines. Yes, Ms. Boris and her attorneys. This is why I wanted to read this order. Who did what? Ms. Boris and her attorneys were using this access to his emails and documents to collect information for litigation purposes. Okay, that's the first thing. That's wrong. They did it to file it, and then they filed it publicly. That's wrong, and thereby released it to the media. The ruling read. Then it goes on with practically speaking. What she did was no different than going in there in the dark of night like Watergate. Boris worked as Ballard's executive assistant while he was CEO of Operation Underground Railroad. When Ballard left the organization, that was in June, after an internal investigation, Boris followed him to his next workplace in her same role, June of 2023. Attorneys said her opinion of Ballard changed in the fall of 2023. She's his executive secretary. And her opinion of him changes as multiple women accused Ballard of sexual misconduct during anti-human trafficking operations. She then filed a lawsuit in October, but had access to his accounts until November. Okay. And that's what I meant when, she's alleging rape in this now dismissed lawsuit, but apparently she didn't understand that she had been raped by Tim Ballard until the fall of 2023. And then she files her lawsuit, even though she's his executive secretary and was under OUR as well before he left there. Okay, so here is this this clip. And this is about the story we just covered. And I think it has a little extra in it.
I was molested and sexually assaulted by Tim in 4 different states, 5 different countries, in the span of 10 months.
One of the lawsuits filed against the nonprofit Operation Underground Railroad and its former CEO, Tim Ballard, has been dismissed. The judge says it's because of the way evidence was obtained, not because of the merits of the case. Fox 13 News investigative reporter Adam Herbetz has the update from downtown Salt Lake City.
Well, for the past year, Tim Ballard has been trying to convince a judge to not let his former assistant use this evidence against him. Celeste Boris says she was groomed and sexually assaulted by Ballard when they were supposed to be on missions to save children from human trafficking. For evidence, she admitted to downloading more than 90 documents from Ballard's email because she still had access to his accounts after quitting and after deciding to file a lawsuit. The judge said Ballard was extremely careless and negligent when he chose not to change his password. But according to the judge, that is not the same as giving her permission. Instead, he says Boris and her attorneys should have been patient because they probably would have been able to get most of those documents through discovery anyway. Quote, "What Ms. Boris did is no different than if she had used a key to access Mr. Ballard's office in the dark of night to secretly photocopy documents from locked file drawers. The court lawfully cannot excuse Ms. Boris's conduct, even if the court assumes that she is a victim and Mr. Ballard is a predator." In 2023, we spoke to a retired judge in Connecticut about what he thought this judge might do.
We can cut this here.
He said he
Bill.
could see the evidence being excluded, but
They talked to a judge who was wrong back in 2023. In other words, his prediction was wrong about, he thought it could be excluded, but he didn't expect it would be dismissed. And, that's being dismissed. Like I say, it's the nuclear option, and it wouldn't be easy to predict that. I'm not sure I would have predicted that either. This is my thing. Okay, what plaintiff's attorney should have done. Now, number one, they should not have anything to do with the improper collection of evidence by their client. That's number one. Number two, they don't start making this stuff public in an attempt to discredit Tim Ballard. Okay, now I'm going to divide this these documents into 2 groups. The ones that say attorney-client privilege, and obviously we've got something that we're not supposed to have. Okay, you don't read it. You seal it up, you contact the other side, and you tell them, I think that we've got something here that we shouldn't have, and you return it. I mean, this happens. I've had situations where, a prosecutor has maybe sent me something that they weren't supposed to send, although that doesn't happen as much since they're obligated to send you everything. And I might have sent something out by mistake. Immediately, they stop, they get a hold of me. I don't think I'm supposed to have this. Am I supposed to have this? And if so, yes, but they want to hear it from me first. If not, then they return it. There are rules to the law, and there's a lot of them, and some are very basic, and they're very basic because they're there to ensure that people get a fair day in court, even for people who objectively might be bad doers. But the other stuff, right? The other stuff that you have, it doesn't say attorney-client privilege. What I would do, and this is my opinion, you sit on it. You don't make it public. You don't file it with stuff. You sit on it. Then you go through the discovery process. And if the defense does not produce some or all of this damning information in discovery, then you file a motion to compel the discovery of the information you already know they have but haven't revealed. Only then, if they still have not produced the documents in spite of a court order, which you get at your motion to compel discovery, Should the plaintiffs produce these documents to show the court the defendant is the one not complying with discovery, then you're the good guys and the defendant's the bad guy. Okay. And here is from December 29th, 2023. This is when this issue was broadcast about the allegation that these documents were stolen. If you don't remember, this was brought up a year and a half ago. And this is the final ruling about what was initially brought up a year and a half ago. That's how long it's been winding its way through court to this ruling.
In 4 different states, 5 different countries, in the span of 10 months.
I'm the bad guy in the story. I'm the bad guy.
The former CEO of Operation Underground Railroad, Tim Ballard, says some of the evidence being used against him in a sexual misconduct lawsuit was stolen by his assistant. Now he's trying to convince a judge to not let the evidence be used against him. Fox 13 News investigative reporter Adam Herbetz takes a closer look.
Well, a year and a half ago.
Ballard means when he says the evidence was stolen. He's talking about his emails. He gave his username and password to his assistant, Celeste Boris. Before she quit, she downloaded some of the emails, eventually attaching them to her lawsuit. Now the question is, will a judge throw out the evidence?
Well, that's an interesting question in the sense that you've just given somebody access to everything you have.
Thomas McCousher is a former judge who agreed to look at the case as a neutral third party. He says it depends on how critical the evidence is to the case and what level of access he gave his assistant.
And certainly judges don't want to reward people for doing something wrong with confidential information, but it doesn't help to have it be a mere verbal understanding.
I can see a possibility of the judge allowing this evidence to be used in Miss Boer's case because she was entitled to get into the email account because Mr. Ballard knew that she was going in there, and that waives the attorney-client privilege.
Ken Sterling is an attorney and former OUR donor who says he has met Tim Ballard once before, but he also says that does not impact his view of whether a judge decides to disqualify the evidence.
I don't think stolen is the appropriate term here. I still think the judge allows this because it might lead to something.
Plaintiffs say some of the emails show Ballard receiving a blessing in which he's anointed as the chosen one, not subject to the jurisdiction of government and church authorities. Some of the emails have to do with a criminal fraud investigation into Ballard that started in 2020. One of the pages shows my face from a report we did that year breaking the story. Another page shows how the nonprofit was told investigators had evidence Attorney General Sean Reyes and Tim Ballard's wife, Catherine, were guilty of witness tampering, that she sent an email to a witness claiming her husband was a second iteration of Joseph Smith, and the prosecutor was the devil. The women believe it's relevant to the case, even if it doesn't directly prove whether Ballard sexually assaulted them.
The cat may be out of the bag here on this information anyway. That's the way it's supposed to be. The matters that are filed in court and on the record are supposed to be public so people can determine whether their courts are doing a good job in handing out justice.
An attorney for the women says Tim Ballard waived any right to confidentiality by giving his assistant access to the email. Reporting in the newsroom, Adam Herbetz, Fox 13 News, Utah.
Well, their experts were really off base on their predictions. By the way, this was December of 2023. The following month in January of 2024, this is going to come up here in a second. This had all blown up, okay? By the way, okay, so defense attorneys, Tim Ballard's attorneys realize that they've got this stuff, and they say, why do you have this? Reaching out to them, writing to them, please return all this stuff to us. We need to return it. Then they refused to return it. Instead, they said, oh, well, we've got some questions for you that you need to answer before we even talk about returning to you the material that we got that's marked as attorney-client privilege. I don't know where these attorneys went to school. Maybe Duquesne. That's terrible. I don't know. Duquesne may be a wonderful school, and there may be some people out there who are watching this show who are graduates of Duquesne. But, oh my word, this is awful, awful stuff. And then the same month, the plaintiff's attorneys, now that the heat is getting put on them by the court, they tell the court, okay, we're going to wait. We're going to stop everything. We're going to get this thing all sorted out by the court, and we are not going to produce or release any other documents other than the ones that have already been released. And I think by that point, they've called them back, right, from being attached in the court file. And 3 days later, in a different lawsuit that they're representing, they release another one of the documents. So yeah, this judge was pretty darn mad, and with good reason. Apparently, these attorneys were acting in bad faith. And the thing that got the judge madder than anything else was that at no point did the attorneys take responsibility for what they had done. They kept acting like they couldn't see that this was a problem. What's the problem, Judge? We didn't do anything wrong. And that actually, if you read the 58-page thing, that actually was what pushed it over from otherwise crippling sanctions to outright dismissal. And here is the first page, the top of the first page of the findings of fact and conclusions of law and order that was entered 6 days ago, dismissing the case. Here's a few things. This is page 5. Ms. Boris told her attorneys about her access to Mr. Ballard's emails and his electronic files, and that she was accessing them after leaving Spear Fund and after suing Mr. Ballard. Her attorneys did not tell her to stop, but instead accepted the documents she provided, attached those materials as exhibits to filings in the various cases, thereby making them publicly accessible, referenced the content of documents in press releases regarding the cases, and otherwise made use of the documents and information contained in the documents in this case and in related cases involving Mr. Ballard and OUR. Some of the materials Ms. Boris took and provided to her attorneys were marked on their face as subject to the attorney-client privilege or work product doctrines. Ms. Boris and her attorneys made use of these documents in the same manner as the other documents Ms. Boris took. Her attorneys did not notify OUR or Mr. Ballard that their client had given them potentially privileged materials. This is completely unethical. When OUR and Mr. Ballard later learned what had happened and demanded the documents be returned, Ms. Boris's counsel refused. The conduct by Ms. Boris and her attorneys was deliberate and egregious, particularly their casual disregard of potentially privileged information. See, that's one of the things that gets the judge really riled. Although Ms. Boris insists she did not know what she was doing was wrong, this too is not credible. He says this over and over about her testimony. At the end of last year, December, I think it was 30th and 31st, the two last days of last year, 24, they had an evidentiary hearing in front of this judge on this issue. And it's taken since then to get this ruling out. But that's where the testimony happened, where she's testifying. And he's saying she's not credible. In other words, the judge thinks she's lying. And he says it over and over again. And he says, why? So although she says she didn't know what she was doing was wrong, this too is not credible. Ms. Boris quit her job working for Mr. Ballard because of his treatment of her and others, consulted lawyers about suing him for misconduct, and then filed a lawsuit against him and others with whom he was affiliated, all while maintaining possession of the electronic equivalent of a key to his locked office and file drawers. Then, after meeting with lawyers and after suing him, this is after filing the lawsuit, she used that electronic key to secretly search through his files and collect evidence to try and help support her case and the cases brought by others. And then it goes into that much quoted part of the order. Practically speaking, it was like a burglar. So he says, from the comfort, okay, the wrongful nature of that conduct should have been obvious to anyone, including, importantly, her lawyers. But now it goes on. While the seeming ease of access to another person's electronic information and the ability to search someone else's personal and business files from the comfort of your living room might cause a person to think that what she is doing is somehow different than breaking into a locked office or file drawer. The reality is the two are the same. Her attorney should have stopped the conduct the moment it came to their attention. turned over the potentially privileged materials to their adversary, and allowed the court to sort out the consequences. Yes. Unfortunately, they did none of those things. And this is frankly why they should be disbarred, is my opinion. Finally, the court lawfully cannot excuse Ms. Boris's conduct. So this is Celeste Boris herself. The court lawfully cannot excuse Ms. Boris's conduct, even if the court assumes that she is a victim and Mr. Ballard is a predator, as her counsel claims. One of the themes underlying much of what she has to say in response to these motions is effectively the ends justify the means. She and her attorneys remain, even now, indignant to any suggestion of impropriety and unapologetic about their actions. And that's what gets it dismissed. But if Mr. Ballard is indeed the predator she claims he is, that fact would have been revealed in due course to the world at large through litigation and a public trial before a jury. A trial in a courtroom, however, takes time, requires patience, and demands all participants to follow established rules. A trial in the court of public opinion, however, contains no such restrictions. The media has an insatiable appetite for information, a short attention span, and much less stringent and exacting rules for obtaining information. The fatal error by Ms. Boris and her lawyers was assuming, or at least acting as though, the rules applicable to a trial in the court of public opinion are the same as the rules for a courtroom. They are not. Terminating sanctions. That means sanctions that ends up dismissing the case, terminating the case. Terminating sanctions are both appropriate and necessary. They are appropriate because the conduct by Ms. Boris and her attorneys lies far outside the bounds of permissible litigation behavior. Monitoring the electronic communications of your litigation adversary is unquestionably forbidden, and long-settled standards prohibit using an opponent's privileged or potentially privileged information. Terminating sanctions are necessary to sanction Ms. Boris for the conduct and to ensure no litigant in the future believes they have license to engage in similar behavior. He finds a couple of cases, one's from like 10 years ago in Utah, one's from much longer ago, where cases were dismissed because of bad conduct by lawyers. None of them even approached the outrageousness of the conduct at issue here. Oh, and now if you go way down into it, paragraph 105, this is really important. I might have alluded to it already. On January 31st, 2024, Mr. Ballard's counsel filed a motion for a Rule 16 pretrial conference, and in it requested leave to conduct an early, limited deposition of Ms. Boris to determine the extent of the privileged and private information taken by her. Everything that's happened in the last year and a half has had nothing to do with the merits of the case and everything to do with what Boris and her lawyers did, this issue. Ms. Boris responded on February 14th, 2024, and on February 20th, 2024, this court held a hearing on the motion. Among other things, the court ordered limited 2-hour depositions of Ms. Boris, Mr. Ballard, and a Rule 30b-6 deposition of OUR. Counsel for Ms. Boris represented to the court that, quote, until the court rules on this, that we will not disseminate them, i.e. the documents Ms. Boris took from Mr. Ballard's electronic files, any further period, end of quote. 3 days later, on February 23rd, 2024, Ms. Boris's counsel publicly filed one of the documents as Exhibit H to the complaint in the Moya case, a different plaintiff against Tim Ballard. This document was identified as Exhibit P on the index prepared by Ms. Boris. Ms. Boris was deposed on March 22nd, 2024. Both Mr. Ballard and a Rule 30b-6 witness for OUR were deposed on March 24th, 2024. And finally, on March 25th, Mr. Ballard filed his motion for sanctions based on Ms. Boris's attorneys filing Exhibit H to the Moya complaint the day after, representing they would make no further use of the document pending a ruling by the court. Okay, so that's about that. But I want to talk about me because I covered this case quite a bit between September and at least October to December of 2023. And then I stopped. And if you go back and you listen to those, I know a lot of people, it involved a lot of reading of the plaintiff's allegations and their documents. I was very critical of them as I was reading through them. And I finally got to the point in December where I said, I'm not doing this anymore because it's patently obvious to me by this point that all they're trying to do is try the case in the media and do so in an incredibly improper way. Very unimpressed with these attorneys from the get-go, from the press conference in September, where even all the reporters are saying, why are we having a press conference? You're not announcing anything. She wouldn't even answer the question as to whether they were going to file a lawsuit against Tim Ballard at that point, for crying out loud. Okay, so having said all that, that's when I stopped reporting on it, and that's why I stopped reporting on it. There is one exception. December 15th, 2023 was the last show I did about Tim Ballard. I believe I went through them all before this show to try and make sure I'm right. But the only exception was June 27th, 2024. And that's when something came out that I thought doesn't really have to do with Tim Ballard as much as it has to do with Elder Ballard and Glenn Beck. And I thought this is something that the audience would be very interested in. And so I did a report on Elder Ballard's secret plan to Mormonize America that was RFM 353, where, according to recent court filings, Elder M. Russell Ballard, former senior apostle in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, engaged in a secret plan with Mormons Tim Ballard and Glenn Beck to infiltrate American evangelical Christian homes with the good news of Mormonism. Yeah, that got its own show. And I struggled about it. But eventually I thought my audience is interested enough in this. And really, it's not so much about Tim Ballard as it is about Elder Ballard. All right. So I think that is it. Let's see. Is there anything else from here? Nope. Any questions?
I say bravo, RFM, for taking us through that. I felt like it was a trip down memory lane because you probably don't know this, but Mormonish, my own podcast, started at that very same time. And I remember talking to my co-host saying, well, what should we cover? Well, maybe there's something in this news. Who's this Tim Ballard? And it just, I mean, we had so much to cover through that whole entire year. I really feel like Tim Ballard's almost responsible for Mormonish because people were very interested in this. Yes. So as you went through it, I was like, I remember we did a podcast on that and that and that. I mean, it is just a twisted tale. So thank you for bringing the receipts on all of it and then bringing us up to speed with this, latest development. It's really, you can't make this stuff up, I think is what we're saying.
Well, these were some of the easiest episodes I'd ever done. All I did was get the court filings and read them and then lightly edit and put it out. And everybody wanted to hear about this. And it was certainly controversial. It was certainly fascinating. It was certainly demeaning. And some of those things I think are probably correct in there. But other things are irrelevant and just put out there for the purposes of smearing Tim Ballard. I think that Tim Ballard, once again, I'll say it again, I think he's a bad egg. I think that he, if Celeste Boris had not done this, and mainly if she'd had better attorneys, this lawsuit would still be going on. In fact, it would be a year and a half into the lawsuit and not a year and a half into the side issue about the plaintiff's attorneys and what they did that ended up getting the case dismissed.
There was a part in this story where you sort of rolled your eyes, and it was either the lawyer or somebody speaking on behalf of how this could play out, who said something like, I could foresee the judge allowing this material in because it leads somewhere.
Yeah, and I don't know what this person, look, the leading somewhere, okay. What this means is, when you're engaged in discovery, okay? When you're engaged in discovery between the parties, you're supposed to be given more liberty in what it is that you're asking, what you're requesting, because you're investigating, you're researching, and you don't necessarily know what is what until you find it, right? So it's not allowed to be completely broad, but it's much broader in discovery. And the reason why is because something that you're looking for, it may not be something that you can use, but it might lead to something that you can use. So this kind of language is often used in order to uphold an objection to a discovery request as being overly broad.
at least in part, what the implication seemed to be is that if we use nefarious means to get evidence, but that evidence is important and it goes somewhere, it should be allowed to be used. And when I saw the facial expression on your face at the moment, I thought something along the lines of, that's ridiculous. You still have to play by the rules.
Yeah, you do. And this case shows that you have to play by the rules. And if you don't, really bad things can happen to you. It's just amazing that in the past couple of years here, I've seen 2 cases get dismissed for outrageous misconduct on the part of the plaintiff.
Yeah.
Where these people, they end up, sabotaging their own cases by behaving so badly.
Talking about sabotaging their own case, what are Mormons doing over in Fairview, Rebecca?
Oh my goodness. The news just gets weirder and weirder. But I will say just one more comment on the Tim Ballard whole scenario is that I would always run things past RFM because they were legal things that we were reporting on our brand new podcast, just started Mormonish podcast. And you were so professional, RFM, all the time. I'd say, oh my gosh, what does this mean? I kind of fell for the media. You're like, nope, it's this and this and that. You're very impartial and you're very professional as you bring these stories to all of us. So I think we really appreciate you for that. So,
well, thank you. Maybe whatever that channel was, will have me on as their expert when they have another case.
Yeah, whatever that little channel is. So, all right. Temple news. Here we go. Fairview mayor receives death threat over the LDS Temple. I reported on this last week when it first happened, and there is an ongoing police investigation, so I was not able to share the exact emails, the online threats. And of course, when you don't share the receipts, well, first of all, they said I made them up. I'm getting so much of that lately. You made up Elder Oaks. You made up the Temple training. I don't make things up. Let me just come out and say that. Yes.
Rebecca, I know that Elder Oaks about Heavenly Mothers.
Yeah.
Has pretty much everybody given in on that by this point that it was legitimate?
I think so.
And what are those people who said you made it up and called you a liar saying when they found out that they were wrong and you were telling the truth?
They never get back to me. They really don't. But in this case, I am finally able to share some of these receipts. And I just have to say, this is so egregious and so ridiculous and so unfortunate. This is Mayor John Hubbard. He's an awesome guy. He was a council member during all of the Fairview stuff going on. Just recently became the mayor after they voted in the conditional use permit saying, go ahead and build the temple. Now, what's going on is that some residents are challenging this based on whether they needed a supermajority. We've talked about this before. I don't need to go into it. So the town, the mayor, they have nothing to do with, quote, blocking the temple. This is not what's happening. There's due process. It's all procedural and has to do with residents taking this perhaps to district court. So one of the first emails, and he received a series of these. And yes.
Rebecca, I'm sorry. I've been talking an awful lot.
No, it's okay. Ask your questions.
I'm just wondering, because you remember now, they were 1 vote shy of having a supermajority.
Yes, they were 1 vote shy. And it's true. Mayor John Hubbard was one of the no votes, and he was a councilman.
He is responsible.
There. So maybe if you wanted to look at it that way, possibly, but in his role as mayor and the town, no one is responsible for this,
and still shouldn't be getting death threats or any kind of
nobody
crap like
should.
that.
Nobody should. Absolutely. And of course, it's interesting because people not only said maybe I made them up, they said maybe it was an ex-Mormon who did it to, disparage Mormons or, LDS member. I don't know. Anyway, the point is nobody can admit that. Would there ever be a time where a LDS person might use a threat, to get something that they wanted, like a temple? I don't know. So this first email that he got, and I do know the names of these people, but because it's an ongoing investigation, I know RFM hates it when I redact things.
Well, you know the names of the people who sent this?
Yeah, I do.
Or at least the people who are representing themselves as sending.
Yes, this is true. I know the name they used on the email. That's right. So this first one says, John, and this is speaking to the mayor of Fairview. It has come to my attention that your office is impeding the construction of a temple by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Fairview, according to your original agreement. Okay.
Whoa, and misspelled the name of the church.
Something. Not only does this smell of bigotry, I hope it not, but it also seems to be contrary to good sense. Temples constructed by the Church of Jesus Christ invariably raise property values, beautify neighborhoods, and have a positive spiritual impact on local culture. Okay, one person's opinion. I am currently living in blank on the border of Texas, and this has come to my attention via several viral posts on the X platform. So people are talking about Fairview still, right? It's ongoing. Please know that your impact is being felt and your reputation is noticed far beyond the boundaries of your jurisdiction, for better or for worse. Please make a good decision. These are the most God-fearing and therefore powerful people you will ever meet. Do not make them your enemies. So, that's definitely a little threatening, I think. What do you guys think?
It's not a threat, but it's certainly, yeah. I mean, what are they going to do? Not bring you cookies?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's certainly
not send the missionaries over.
Yeah, it's aggressive. It's
aggressive.
It's a veiled threat of some sort.
Exactly.
Something's going to happen, and you're gonna meet powerful people, top men.
Yeah.
Top men. Don't make these God-fearing people your enemies.
Yeah. You don't want to be on the wrong side of it. Your press might get burnt down. All kinds of things can happen. Whistling whittlers, right? We don't know. So, that was just kind of mild. And, but it was also turned over to the police because, it says don't make them your enemies, But then, and so Mayor John wrote a very nice response. I thought this was great. I'll read this. Dear Mr. So-and-so, thank you for your message and for sharing your concerns. I want to assure you that the town of Fairview has not taken any action to delay construction of the proposed temple by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
The mayor's the one who spells the name of the church right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he knows. The town approved a conditional use permit for the project, and our staff has continued to work professionally and transparently throughout the process. The matter you reference stems from a legal appeal filed by a citizens group, not by the town, challenging the way the protest area was calculated. The appeal is now before the district court and could potentially delay construction depending on the court's decision. In fact, I have proactively reached out to representatives of the LDS Church through the media and offered to serve as an intermediary between the church and the citizens group in hopes of resolving the matter amicably and avoiding protracted litigation. My goal is to help facilitate respectful dialogue and cooperation in the best interest of all parties involved. I appreciate your engagement and hope this helps clarify the situation. Best regards. So he took the high road, right? And didn't say, what are you doing, right? He wrote a very nice professional letter. I thought that was great. So then he received another email, and these next three are from the same person. So this one, to the mayor of Fairview, says, your religious bigotry, and an okay sign. I do not know what that means. I don't know if they use you're wrong or
These are the same as the first one?
No. The next three I'm going to show are going to be the same person. And there are a series of emails that came in very quickly within a few minutes of each other. So because we don't know how he was using the word your, we don't exactly know what this means, but we do have the phrase religious bigotry, because some people said, oh, he might have gotten a threat, but it doesn't have anything to do with the temple. I believe it does because of the continued use of religious bigotry, meaning, singling out the temple to say we're not going to, we don't want that here. So anyway, I don't know what that means. Has a little okay sign. So then the next one he gets says, oops, you're a bigot. Bummer. Okay. So I don't know if I got something like that. I don't know if I'd be really concerned. I'd just maybe be confused about what was happening. But here's the one that gave the detectives concern. You're, and he did use you're correctly, a religious bigot, and then simply the word die, period. Okay. So I just can't believe it's come to this. The wonderful people in Fairview, the residents, the LDS members, and the people who try to run this town, despite all this going on, there is no need for this. And I just, it's just that I feel like it's that Nephi-Laban thing, right? Better that one man should perish so that a temple can be built. Maybe they think they'll take his name through after the fact. I don't know. It's really not funny. I just don't even know what to think. But there are examples of people threatening violence, using violence, violent rhetoric to try to justify their ends. I don't know. What do you guys think?
It looks like all three of these were sent maybe within 1 or 2 minutes of each other, and
Yeah.
2 were sent at 4:37, and the
Mhm.
second one at 4:38.
Mhm. Yep. So I don't know what's going to happen, but it is, it has been turned over to police, and they do know the names, so we'll see.
Mormons are taught. I didn't incur any violence in my time learning about the church or having a testimony of it. No one really persecuted me, but I was taught in Sunday school lessons that we are a persecuted people because we're a peculiar people. We are persecuted. And we've had to go from place to place to place. There was the old Hans Mill massacre. There were lots of other things. We won't tell you the ones that we did to others. We'll just tell you the ones that they did to us. And so you are raised adopting the persecution complex that Mormonism has. I say that to say this, which is Fairview hasn't done anything violent. All violence in any interaction that Mormons play a part in, when you look at the history, 85% of them are things that the Mormons started or carried out themselves. It wasn't the Gentiles who created the Whistling Whittlers. It wasn't the Gentiles who created the Danites. It wasn't the Gentiles who had violent rhetoric about putting javelins through people. It wasn't the Gentiles who carried out Mountain Meadows Massacre. It isn't Gentiles that have the Strengthening Church Members Committee and keeps an eye on everybody. Mormons are responsible for their own violence, and for the times that other people got pissed at them and carried things out. Hans Mill Massacre, horrific. But if we got into the weeds of what happened there, that instance, like every other instance, had some part being played by the Mormons themselves, and Joseph Smith, namely.
No, I think you're right. And someone in the chat pointed out, and I didn't catch this, that the very threatening one was the second email sent. So apparently they were just this, and then I think the third one would have been the bummer one. Is that right? I can't.
It's the second one. It's the second one in order here.
Yeah, in
We
order.
got now this 437. That's
right.
the first one, and the third one is 437. You can't
okay.
tell between the two which is sent first, but this is sent a minute later.
And so that would be the last one. Oops, you're a bigot. Yeah. And in all this temple building, it's interesting. There is a form of threatening and retaliation. I think about Cody, how the residents put up a sign that said, "Preserve our Cody neighborhood." They had organized. The signs were stolen. Devils were drawn on it, kind of alluding to, you guys are religious bigots, you're devil worshipers. In Lone Mountain, somebody that was vocal about the temple and the zoning. A review was put on Yelp saying this person is a religious bigot. Do not patronize their business. So there is this retaliatory sense, which just doesn't belong, but they're very quick to cry persecution and religious bigotry right out of the gate. Heaven forbid it should just be zoning or codes, right? No, it's not that. It's got to be persecution. So I totally agree. I'm glad that you explained that, Bill, because you said it so perfectly. So anyway,
it is unfortunate that anytime the Mormons don't get their way, they cry religious persecution.
Yep, that's exactly right. So we'll keep an eye. We'll see what happens next. But as Mayor John said in his reply to the first email, district court now with the residents, and we'll see what happens next. So another thing, here we go. It's funny. Each of these temples kind of follows the same trajectory, and Cody and Heber have been neck and neck ever since we started reporting 2023, right? It's another thing that kind of launched Mormonish because there was this temple stuff going on. This is the Heber Valley, Utah temple. It was announced way back in 2021. This has been ongoing. There was a very quick groundbreaking October of 2022. And then it kind of hit the fan from there on, and we've all been reporting on it. This is a mega temple. This is 210 feet tall and 87, almost 88,000 square feet. And I'm not going to go into all the details, the problems with it. There's a watershed. They're going to have to pump out millions of gallons initially and 1 million gallons a day. It's in the flight plan of the Heber Airport. There's just all kinds of issues with this temple. And, 2 different residents groups had sort of launched petitions, lawsuits, one having to do with dark skies and one having to do with the way that it was passed. And this is county land in the middle of a city. And that's kind of what it all stems from. The county passed a Legislative Development Agreement Act saying, sure, build it. They threw out things that had been in place for dark skies for 20 years, just threw it out and paved the way for this to happen. A lot of residents said, hey, wait a minute, this didn't go through any kind of due process. This is the county. LDS members, one member on the county council stood next to President Nelson with a golden shovel at the groundbreaking. So there are all these questions about this council and how quickly they passed it. So we talked last week about the summary judgment. The ruling finally came in, and the Judge Mabee said construction can go forward on the Heber Valley Temple of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints after a judge said Wednesday that the Wasatch County's approval of the project was legal. The lawsuit that's still in place says, nope, a legislative development agreement, that's not how you do it. You got to have public input. You got to be able to vote on it. You guys, as a small council, standing next to President Nelson with a golden shovel, just passed it, wiped out all, zoning codes, dark sky ordinances. That's the kind of the crux of their lawsuit. Simplistically, it says construction can go forward on the Heber Valley Temple of the, I'm just going to stop saying Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I think I can cut like 10 minutes off of the show if I just say the church.
You should start every paragraph with, and it came to pass.
And it came to, I'm not kidding, wrapping your mouth around that. I'll be so glad when they go to the Church of Jesus Christ. That'll shorten it in half. The judge said Wednesday that the Wasatch County application of the project was legal. The decision from the 4th District Judge ends the legal battle as to whether the county's use of the Legislative Development Agreement, again, that's just the county commission saying, stamp, yep, we're going to do it, to approve the project violated federal or state laws. And this is what the residents group who's suing was trying to say. A small group of residents in Red Ledges, the neighborhood across the street from the future temple site, sued the county in November of 2023, shortly after the leaders announced their plans to go forward. And then the church joined the lawsuit. This happens in all the towns. The residents are eventually to protect themselves, sue their own town. The church joins with the town with their deep pockets so that they can get what they want. It has happened. There's a playbook. Everybody knows that by now. So anyway, the judge heard the oral arguments, and she just came back saying that those arguments are not well supported. Go ahead and build your temple. Here's a picture of the groundbreaking. You see President Nelson. So exciting. It's all going to happen. And then just this afternoon, I barely had time to make slides and I didn't have time to print anything out. I learned that the residents group who had launched the lawsuit is going to take it up to the Supreme Court of Utah. But before we talk about that, I wanted to play this really quick. This is something that happened very early on. There was a meeting where residents were allowed to come in and talk. And this is a representative talking about the dark skies lawsuit. Look what happens, and I played this before, but I don't think you can play it enough. Look what happens when a resident in the town tries to talk about a legal issue, a procedural issue, to an LDS county council. Look how she's treated. Look how the council aligns itself as if they were the LDS Church. This council is supposed to be representing this person speaking. She's a resident. They're supposed to be representing LDS members. They're supposed to be representing everyone in the area. But just watch how she's treated, and you'll see what they've been dealing with the whole time.
We talk to a lot of people all over the valley, and we interact with a lot of people all over the valley. And mostly what we've heard is it doesn't matter. They're not going to listen. They've never listened. They won't engage. And I don't believe that's true. And I can't believe that's true. We also get accused of being religious bigots and only caring about the temple. And I'm telling you, that's not true. And everywhere we go, we say the same thing. So I want to read something very quickly. Russell Nelson, president of the Church of Latter-day Saints, spoke in February about the need for members of the church to be peacemakers. He explained that now is the time to cease insisting that it is your way or no way. He challenged followers of the faith to examine their discipleship within the context of the way you treat others. I bless you to make your adjustments that may be needed so that your behavior is enabling, respectful, and representative of true followers of Jesus Christ.
It's not the Church of Latter-day Saints. It's the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, just to make sure that's clear.
It's clear.
Thank you.
I was reading how it was written. Okay. My apologies.
So what's the point of that comment?
The point of that is,
Yes. I mean, are you saying we're not?
no, but the point of that is we're trying to outreach to the community and share our concerns and our thoughts. We are not against the temple. We have never said we're against the temple. We get characterized as that, but that is not the case. I just wanted to make that statement because I hear it continuously, mostly on social media, but I've heard others get up and speak along the way that that's the case, and it's not true.
And you've had members of your group on a podcast called Mormonish, which is absolutely
That was me.
which is absolutely against what we're doing and
And you
anti-religious.
would not have heard anything out of my mouth against the faith or a temple. And in fact, I stated that pretty much the same thing on that.
Well, and I have,
But we have to have a means of communicating with people. It's very, very difficult to communicate in the valley and the state.
well, I haven't had a chance to go back and listen to it and write it down exactly the way it was said. But in that podcast, very close to the front, I don't remember whether I believe it was the gentleman that was with you that made the statement. But the statement was made at the time the temple was announced, how many months before the location was determined. The statement was made by that gentleman was, "Oh, there goes our dark skies." Not having a clue where it was going to be put. That was already concerned. I'll go listen to it. It's there.
I'd appreciate it, and I'll be happy to talk with you further.
Yeah.
It's not an issue.
So I heard that
I'm
and I thought, wait a
representing-
minute, there was a question.
I think we're getting off.
Yeah. Anyway.
So let me
nothing.
finish. Thank you so much. So why are we want to
think
show
that's
an
the end.
example of what the
Yeah.
county
Again, yes, there go our dark skies because your legislative development agreement overturned a 20-year dark sky ordinance, right? But you can see how that council, it was the LDS Church. It was. Do you know what I mean? What we and your unmute RFM. I want to get your take. It's
Said,
just
you know, if
so
I'd been that lady
difficult.
and she did great, but I would say,
Yeah.
why are you so threatened by freedom of speech? What do you have against the First Amendment? You need to tell us right now, because maybe you're not fit to hold public office in the United States.
Yeah. Well, what had happened is they had approached all different news stations and they'd been turned down. They had even taped an interview with a news station and then they were told to pull it. So when she said, we can't get anyone to listen to our point of view, she meant it. You know, you have to try everything else before you come on Mormonish. But I just show that because it represents.
I mean, we turned her down. She tried to get on this show. We said, forget
Can't
about
even
it.
get on that. We'd take anybody in those days. But again, I just show this to
I'm
show
kidding, of
what
course.
an uphill climb it is. And the accusation of religious bigotry every time. And that's not what's happening. So anyway, I just wanted to revisit that really quick. Any thoughts on that, Bill? And then I'll finish out.
Is anyone offended easier than Mormons are offended? If Mormons,
Not the church.
You can't even shorten the 82-word name of the church to just trying to get it out of your mouth as fast as possible. And Mormons are like, oh my goodness, I can't believe you didn't say the full name of the church. Oh, you must hate us. You must be persecuting us. No, it's just a lot to say.
I can't believe you said the second name of the church instead of the third name of the church.
I just want to say it with less words. I just want to get it out faster.
Because that used to be the name of the church. God used to be cool
Yeah.
with that before he changed his mind in 1838.
Yeah, and she was actually reading that statement from President Nelson from a news article where the news article called them the Church of the Latter Day, because they make that mistake all the time. Nobody knows what to say. So many headlines say the Church of the Latter Day. So anyway, we don't have to go back to my slides, Bill. I'll just paraphrase very quickly. But anyway, the ruling by Judge Mabee, and now all of a sudden breaking news, the residents from Red Ledges, they are going to continue with their suit. They're going to appeal up to the Supreme Court of Utah, saying, no, there were irregularities in how this was passed. The legislative development agreement is not legal. And their lawyer said they just don't really think that Judge maybe didn't quite understand, everything that was going on. So just like Cody, Wyoming, if you guys remember this, they escalated it all the way up to the Supreme Court of Wyoming, saying there were irregularities. There was a city planner. And unfortunately, that ruling just came back, as we reported a month or so ago. go ahead and build, so it's the same trajectory and usually the same result, but here they're going, they're going to try it. So we will keep you updated.
All right.
Great job, Rebecca. And also great job getting that lady on your show too.
Oh yeah. We try what we try. So, and Bill, go ahead and just skip the rest of my temple slides and skip that one. We'll do that next. Okay, perfect.
All right. So we've got this other abuse story. This is a strange one too. A family of 4 accused of caging up and sexually abusing adopted foster children. In early 2025, Florida authorities removed 9 children ranging in age from 7 to 16 from a remote mobile home in Fort White, Columbia County, following reports of severe abuse. The household included 5 biological children and 4 privately adopted or fostered children. The investigation began after a child was seen with a functioning stun gun at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Let's get it all the way out there. At a Latter-day Saints camp in Branford, prompting child safety authorities to intervene. Court documents reveal disturbing patterns of mistreatment. Some children were locked under a bunk bed with plywood screws preventing escape. Others had vinegar sprayed in their faces as punishment. One reportedly suffered splinter injuries after a plywood board was pressed against their body. The alleged abuse also included being struck with a cane, though allegedly without leaving visible marks, and the provision of non-prescription medicine. The adoptive and foster children were reportedly forced to do chores, kept illiterate, and were even unaware of their own birthdays, while the biological children received preferential treatment. Brian and Jill Griffith, age 47 and 41, along with their adult children, Dallin, 21, and Liberty, 19. Dallin and Liberty, that's a Mormon family just by the names of the kids. They've been arrested and charged with aggravated child abuse. Bond has been set around $500,000 each. Officials say that one of the children has even accused the adult son of sexual assault. All 9 children are now in the custody of the Florida Department of Children and Families, and the 10th foster child previously in the household was located safe with their biological mother in Arizona. So there's a crazy story too. And Rebecca, you've got some additional information on this story.
Well, first I'd like to say that this came out the same day within like an hour of the missionary story. And again, the headline was Mormon family, abuses children. It's just not a good day for Mormonism. It's a good thing they have distanced themselves from that word. But I always like to try to figure out, are these people active in the church? Who are they? What might their social scenario be there in the ward? And I did notice, at first I thought, oh my gosh, it said that the ward was alerted and then the authorities were called in. I thought, could it be a bishop that overrode calling Curtin McConkie? Then I read the article closer and it said it was a woman who had reached out and described the scenario. But I was able to determine that the father there has been the ward finance clerk for 2 years. So he is known to the bishop. He meets with the bishop. He works with the bishop. He's in the, upper inner circle of the ward, and yet no one. And I know this happens. I know that, things that happen behind closed doors sometimes are never seen, but, he's definitely in the inner circle of the ward as the ward finance clerk while all this is going on at home.
Yeah, this is crazy in that they've got foster kids. The one kid's walking around with a stun gun that's operational. That seems crazy. This just didn't start to show up one day. That this family has got a ton of dysfunction in it, and on some level, it seems as though the ward just didn't notice it. And I think in part, as a Mormon, we're all trained to put on our suits and ties, put on our pretty dresses, get into the ward building for the 2 or 3 hours, and just smile and just make the church sound good. And I guess it's entirely possible that everyone else in that ward was just oblivious to this. But this seems so egregious that seems sort of hard to fathom.
Yeah, and did you mention that he was a returned missionary, the son? Sorry, I didn't know if I heard that. Yeah,
Nope.
he is served a mission. So yeah, like you said, on the surface, a great family taking in foster kids and adopting kids, but then what's going on behind closed doors?
They all look like they've lost the light in their eyes, don't they?
It's hard to have light in a prison jumpsuit, right? You look a little
Real
different.
photos will do that to you.
Yeah.
Any
Yeah,
thoughts?
there are thousands, hundreds and thousands of foster families that take in kids that the state just can't find a good place, a safe place for them with relatives. And they do an incredibly good work. Unfortunately, there are also people who take advantage of the system to make money from the government that's supposed to be being used on these kids, and they scrimp on that so they can line their pockets and treat these kids like subhumans. And if these allegations are correct, it sounds like this is what has been going on here. And these people really should see the inside of a jail cell for a long time. Obviously, the judge felt the same way, putting bail at $500,000 on each of them.
On each.
Yeah, it was serious. And so a couple of stories in tonight's newscast with some really egregious behaviors that, not that the system can catch all of those things, but if we were less trusting of those who are Mormon or those who are priesthood holders or those who have a temple recommend, if we would just trust them the same way we trust people that don't have those things or aren't carrying out those responsibilities, and we just extend a tiny bit of skepticism that we all do in our daily life around things, maybe we could catch more of this before it gets this far into these things happening. So the next story here is maybe it's the 47 days parade and all of that went into Pioneer Day or Pioneer Day.
That's right. We're going to talk about all of that. I was going to say that another, sorry, I think I'm echoing somehow. Another news story that came out was people have been losing their retirement here in the area because of a financial firm. Of course, I had to look it up. The head of that is also, an LDS ward finance clerk. He's in trouble. I'm like, what is going on? It's just been crazy news. But at the same time last week, it was Pioneer Day, right? July 24th, Utah gets 2 4th of July kind of holidays where you can dress up and have fireworks. It's not a day off for everybody, but for some people it is, and it's a big celebration. So for those of you that don't know, in Utah, the 24th celebrates Pioneer Day, which commemorates the arrival of the first group of Mormon pioneers, including Brigham Young, who declared, kind of raising himself up out of his wagon. Apparently, he had green glass sunglasses. I saw this in the Church History Museum. I picture him kind of pulling them down like this and going, "This is the place." Very dramatic, very exciting.
Like Don Johnson.
Like Don Johnson. Yeah, this is where it all started. Pioneer Day. Now, when I was a kid in Washington State, we had parades around the ward house. I don't know if anyone else experienced that where, nobody in Washington was celebrating it, but we in the LDS Church, we would, decorate our bikes and everything. I saw a funny post from Sandra Tanner where she said there's 2 other states that celebrate it, Illinois for the Mormons leaving and California that they never got that far. I thought that was pretty funny. Yes.
Rebecca, did you say you guys would get together and do a parade around the ward building?
Yeah, in another state. Yeah. And I've heard other people say that they've done that too. Yeah. Do you remember how the Banner of Heaven started out? The Hulu series based on that. That's exactly what it was. They were all dressed up. They were going to be, I think that was in Utah though. But yeah, I think a lot of people did do that, even though it was in other states. It's Pioneer Day.
How Andrew Garfield was his 2 little girls, and they had just come back from a Pioneer Day parade because it was the 24th of July, 1984, right?
Yep, that was exactly right. Yeah, so Pioneer Day is a thing. Now, interestingly, people who live in Utah who are never Mormon or people that are perhaps post-Mormon, several years ago, they started a new tradition called Pie and Beer Day, right? Hear the pun there, Pioneer Day, Pie and Beer Day, right? And all kinds of memes. People get into this. Breweries and restaurants offer all kinds of things. They have celebrations, they have specials. It's Pie and Beer Day, right? It's a great idea. And it's kind of the opposite of Pioneer Day. I noticed this year, however, that when you have a good idea, somebody's going to borrow it. So here we go. Pie and Root Beer Day. That's right. LDS people can now celebrate all the fun of Pie and Beer Day with root beer. I mean, it doesn't work, right? Pie and Root Beer Day. No, it doesn't work. It doesn't make
It
sense.
probably tastes better though.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
I mean,
I'm just
together.
saying it was a beloved anti-establishment celebration, and now it's being made mainstream here in Utah. Pie and Root Beer Day. So anyway, celebrate whichever one you want. But one of the big parts of the celebration here in Utah is the Days of 47 parade down in Salt Lake. Now, I did not go this year. I went 2 years ago when it was Elder D. Todd Christofferson, who was the Master of Ceremonies. This year, do you recognize this gentleman, RFM?
I do, but only because Bill talked about him last Friday on Mormonism After Dark, every Friday at 8:00 p.m. Mountain Time, except for this Friday.
There you go. You got to get that in there. Yeah. So this is President Holland, and he was Master of Ceremonies riding in a Mercedes. There he is. He had his hand stretched out. I had to just, it kind of looked like he was zapping the crowd.
Is he the evil? Is he the emperor?
Yeah. I don't know. Or some apostolic priesthood something. Anyway, I was just having fun at work today.
Zapping.
Yeah. And I just kind of drew those on. I thought it was kind of fun. But yeah, it was a big deal. And there was a big article, a big write-up about it. And he says, I'm okay with the martial part. I don't know about the grand, he said, with his characteristic humor. Ha, ha, ha. Anyway, so he drives in his car and he drives down the parade route. Now, when I saw Elder Christofferson, I was with the group and we all went, oh my gosh, he was flanked by 6 burly church security guards. And apparently this is the same scenario here with President Holland. And now when I was at the parade, the apostle was flanked by all that heavy security. People were going, who is that? You know, and then you see somebody from the state legislature, people coming by, no security. I mean, it really is very interesting. So here's a picture. People love President Holland. We love you, but you can see the security that's around him. I mean, you cannot miss this. So I, of course, had to make, fun little short about it. If you want to play that, Bill, just because I thought it's so, I don't know. Is it excessive? Is it extreme? I'm not sure.
As soon as it shows up here we go.
So cool. Yeah,
I
no,
think
look
the
at that.
apostles have had a lot of hits put out on them. They probably got an email right
I don't
before
know.
the parade saying die or something.
But if you notice, I called it the Elite Moroni Squad. And of course, my co-host Landon came up with because apostles always use protection. But this is something that you may not know. Do you see this badge here? The church security. Now, at least 2 years ago, they may have moved to the lapel pin this year, but they were wearing these badges, right? Like a policeman, only they have a Moroni on them. I think Porter Rockwell probably would have really wanted one of those if he could have had one.
Yes,
So,
you know what Porter Rockwell said?
oh,
He
what
said,
did
we
he
don't
say?
need no stinking badges.
We don't need those stinking badges. That's right. And so that kind of sent me down a little bit of a rabbit hole about church security, which I thought might be just interesting to touch on really quick. So it says they work for the church security. They carry a badge. This was an article the year that I saw Elder Christofferson, because I think that's when everyone kind of took notice. Wow. Look at this show of force, right? And look at these badges. It says, you no doubt know the church has its own security officers. You've seen them patrolling the faith's headquarters, protecting the top leaders and safeguarding the temples and the historic sites. But did you know, like the fictional Joe Friday of Dragnet fame, real life peace officers, they do carry a badge. And there it is. It has a Moroni in it, which I thought was really interesting. So it talks about how these are specially designed. Here is a picture from the year that I went with Elder Christofferson, and he's got his security right there. So they talk about the job of the security, and it says they are asked to maintain a calm and professional manner while responding to a variety of security-related situations, such as fire, intrusion and panic alarms, disruptive or problem individuals, unauthorized entry, bomb threats, violence in the workplace, issues dealing with mental subjects or unruly individuals, natural disasters, etc. And you do have to have a temple recommend in order to be a member of the elite Moroni squad. Here is a picture of the lapel pin that you'll see. I haven't ever, I saw the badge at the parade, but ever since then, if you're in Temple Square, you'll often see the little tie tack or the little lapel pin there. So I don't know. Have you guys ever come across a church security officer?
No, but I understand that Brent Metcalf was one for a while.
I didn't know that. Interesting. Yeah, a lot of this info I have is from a job description. There's a video that you can watch showing what will you do. Of course, I had to put, when they talk about a training facility, the church security forces often draw from law enforcement ranks, though not necessarily certified through the state. They even have their own training center, complete with shooting range, on the western edge of Salt Lake. And here's where I went down another rabbit hole, and I remember this, but I'd forgotten it. They were going to build this huge complex, right? Do you guys remember this at all 2 years ago? It was a huge security training, like giant warehouses that they were going to build. It was going to have 2 classrooms along with several rooms dedicated to specialized security instruction, 10 smaller adjoining rooms, force-on-force training. That was something they were going to handle. Defensive tactics and physique training. One area would feature the use of force simulator. I have no idea what that would be. Would there be like a dummy of an apostle and somebody would pretend to grab him and you would learn the maneuvers and the techniques?
How would they tell the difference, Rebecca?
Do you know what?
Don't give me straight lines like that.
I don't know. There was also going to be 2 shooting ranges, one 35 yards and one 100 yards. This was going to be this big thing. It really begs the question, isn't the Lord protecting these apostles? I mean, I don't know. They have to have this. So there's a picture of, a shooting range. It's not necessarily that one right there. And what is interesting to me is that, this was announced in 2019. And I was like, I wonder if that was ever built. Somebody else had the same question. Was that ever built? Did it ever come about? So I couldn't find anything on it. So I finally turned to AI and they said the church closed its planned security training facility in downtown Salt Lake City. The facility, which was announced in 2019, was intended to be part of a large seismic retrofit. Basically, when they started working on the temple, they kind of scrapped plans for this. Although they do have training facilities. They did not apparently build this gigantic one that they were going to, although who knows, right? It could be kind of a shadowy thing. We have no idea, but I thought this was interesting. This person, maybe you don't remember the tornado in Salt Lake City. There was a tornado in downtown Salt Lake City decades ago. I think it was in I can't remember, was it 1999? Anyway, it was
2004.
Was it 4? Okay, yeah, it could have been. I can't remember now when it was, but somebody was
January 4th, 2000.
No, that says 2020 being answered. Yeah, I can't remember when that tornado. Somebody look it up in the chat for me. I want to say 99, but I might be wrong. Okay, so this person says they were downtown Salt Lake when that tornado hit, and actually one person was killed. I mean, it was a pretty big deal, right? And so they said they walked past Temple Square, right? And it said that church security was everywhere. Some were holding AR-15s, M16 carbines, obviously following some kind of security protocol, but it was the first time I saw the built-in paranoia of the church. They looked ridiculous. It was a tornado. Nobody was trying to invade the compound.
Did they shoot at it?
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know if they shot at it or not.
Your memory serves you well, Luke. It was August 11th, 1999.
There you go. See, sometimes I can just pull it out, right? I was trying to think, what was I doing? I remember the news, but yeah, so they definitely, they look calm, they look peaceful, but they are ready to spring into action. The only interaction I've heard of with church security, as far as among my friends, is I do have a friend who is a transgender woman, and she was hauled out of conference and taken off to the side and grilled, and they looked at her driver's license, and in the end they said, we mistook you for someone else who's on our list of troublemakers. So that's the only personal interaction I have heard of.
Some other transgender woman.
I don't know, but anyway.
By the way, if you look at the let me see here. If I take this off here, you got that. There's theirs, right? Which is somewhat similar to.
Oh, interesting.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I
don't know what is that City Hall in LA, whatever that building is with the huge tall spire on it.
Yep.
That some say the LA Temple kind of mimics, but I think that badge kind of mimics it too, with Moroni substituting in for the building.
Yeah. No, I do understand they need security. Honestly, it's a global organization. They do need people. I would say they probably need it to help missionaries, right? That might be in tough situations. So they say they have about 200 security officers out there. It's just the badge that got me. It just seems like dress up.
Well, after the first story tonight, I think we need security to protect people from the missionaries.
You know what? It is. It's come full circle. That's exactly it. So, and I think I'll skip the rest of my slides for the sake of time, Bill, and put those on next week's show. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting. A little bit of a deep dive and a little bit of information about Pie and Beer Day. If anybody wants to celebrate it late, it's not too late. You can always have pie and beer.
All right. If no other stories, then we should at least make mention of what we've got coming up, because we're a week away. Monday next week. So a week from tonight.
Yes.
Live event in Salt Lake City, Monday, August 4th, 5:30, the doors open, 6 o'clock, the show starts. We'll have a stand-up comedy routine going before the show starts to help you all get warmed up while you're in your seats. Get your tickets now. We've got a few tickets remaining for that, so do get those. If you want to know how to get those tickets, if you go into the YouTube description down below for either where this video is residing on the Mormonish YouTube channel or the Mormon Discussion YouTube channel, go into the YouTube description. Down below, it will say, it will notify you of this event, give you the link that you can go to get tickets for this. So next Monday night, August 4th, 6 p.m. Anything you guys want to say about this? I'm really excited. We're just around the corner from it now.
Yeah, I'm really excited. No, this is going to be really fun.
And that's the last event of this coming week, because I'm flying down to Salt Lake tomorrow. That's the plan. And then we're going to Wednesday night. We've got we're working on a very special Mormonism Live episode. And then Friday, you're presenting at Sunstone in the afternoon.
Around 4:30 p.m. Yep, on the Book of Abraham. And then you go Saturday, late morning.
Yes. I and Dr. Bell. Dr.
Oh, are you presenting with Randy? I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yes, I am.
Good. You guys are just the
How
dynamic
great your
duo.
last Mormonish did when you had him on, and you just got all these viewers. So I thought, let me get Randy on, and hopefully.
Oh, he's a draw. Are you kidding? He's fantastic. And then that night, you guys have your other event, your other live event. So
yes, that's just me and Bill.
Yeah.
Saturday, August 2nd. And that'll be in downtown Salt Lake City. And there's about 12 tickets left for that. We've got 48 tickets sold, so 12 tickets left for that. And that link is down in the description on the Mormon Discussion channel for this newscast episode, as well as most of the past episodes we've done recently as well. So I will put it in the live chat here also. Anything else you want to say about this event, RFM?
I'm looking forward to seeing everybody who's going to show up. It's going to be a great time. We'll be able to talk about things that we don't usually get to talk about, because Rebecca will not be there. We'll devote most of the time to talking about Rebecca.
You're going to talk about me. All right, fine. I better get a ticket so I can find out what's being said.
And I'll put those links in the live chat right now. So the first one that's showing up right now is for the Saturday night event. And then what I'm posting here next is the live showing of the newscast Monday, August 4th. Again, there's some tickets remaining for both those events. Get those now. Otherwise, let's talk about what you guys have got going on this week. RFM, you just did an episode this past Saturday where David O. McKay maybe said something a little extreme.
I know he lost his testimony of the freaking Book of Mormon, and not when he's a kid, not when he's a missionary, when he's the prophet of the church in the 1960s. The evidence seems pretty strong on this.
Yeah, so if you want to see what it was that David O. McKay said, what context it was said in, there's nobody better to lay that out than Radio Free Mormon, and that was his last episode that aired Saturday night, 8 p.m., and you can see that on the Mormon Discussion channel.
And the best part is it's less than half an hour long.
Yeah, you get right to it, lay it out, and then leave us, the audience, stunned, trying to figure out what David O. McKay could mean by that, other than he'd lost his testimony of the Book of Mormon.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy. Rebecca, what do you have going on?
Well, I have another episode with the wonderful Ganesh Sherian, who is also in town for Sunstone. Very exciting. And he is going to be there kind of warming up the audience for our event on Monday, the newscast event. So it's like a double whammy. It's like a double feature. But we, of course, using his book through the lens of his new book, everybody go out and get it if you have not already. I have it here somewhere. Mormonism and violence, a theme throughout. This kind of ties into exactly what we were talking about this entire newscast, the persecution complex, the ends justify the means, the Nephi-Laban. Anyway, absolutely fascinating. And it's also with this guy named Darren. The funniest story. We will explain it on the episode. Who the heck is this guy named Darren? You just run into really interesting people, but it's a great episode. It's going to be tomorrow night, Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Mountain Time on Mormonish Podcast.
Excellent. All right. And then what do we have going Wednesday? Do you want to say any more about Wednesday's show, RFM?
It looks like I am, not you though, but I and Randy Bell are going to be broadcasting, and maybe John DeLynn from the John DeLynn Memorial Studios. He's been kind enough to allow us to go there. There may be another individual involved, and it may have to do. It's really going to be, it's a lot of moving parts. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be unusual, and there may be I'm not even going to jinx it, okay? But there may be somebody else there filming for purposes of a different project that they're doing. So we'll see if that happens.
Excellent. And there will not be, just because RFM and I will both be in Salt Lake City, and I've got my presentation there at 4:30. There will be no Mormonism After Dark this coming Friday. So we'll pick that up a week from Friday. But folks, do hit the like button, do subscribe. We appreciate you watching the Mormon Newscast. We also depend on your donations. And so if you can go to the Mormonish channel, YouTube channel, you can go to their donor box. I did post that in the live chat earlier. I'll try to do that again. Also, you can go to the Mormon Discussion channel or go to mormonismlive.org, for instance, and send a donation. That's how the newscast here survives. We very much appreciate those who support Rebecca's work, RFM's work, myself, and allow us to do this week in and week out, bringing you guys the news that has to do with Mormonism in a quick format so that you can get it all in one place. RFM, Rebecca, thank you so much for being with the show tonight, and the stories that you brought, and the work that you put in to deliver those stories.
Absolutely. I have a great time on Monday nights going over the news with Rebecca and Bill Reel.
Excellent. So folks, thank you so much. Have a great night, and hopefully we'll see you guys in Salt Lake City. Yes. Take it easy, everybody. Bye-bye.
That's a wrap for this week's edition of the Mormon Newscast. We appreciate you tuning in and sharing this time with us. Keep the conversation going and stay informed on all things Mormonism. Until next week, wishing you peace and joy. See you next Monday at 6 p.m. on the Mormon Newscast.